Okay, so I've connected my IR receiver to my microbit. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. And I can control it with this remote. And this remote sends an infrared signal out of this little bulb, hits the receiver. And so you can see that the receiver is signaling light. Now, our eyes cannot see this bulb turn on, but the video camera actually can. So it's kind of neat. You can see the video camera can show us that light is going on when I press the button. But when you look at it with your eye, you can't see that. So normally we would connect this to our microbit, but I'm going to connect it to this oscilloscope here. And the oscilloscope is going to show me the voltage reading on this pin. So instead of sending the signal out to my microbit, I'm going to send the signal to this scope, and it's going to tell me how many volts is on this pin. So I've connected that. I'm going to zoom in here to this screen. So this is going to show us a 0-volt line. And when I press my remote, I should get a signal on here. So I'll press 1, see what I get. Oh, that's nice. So you can see it is 0 volts for a chunk of time. And each of these boxes here represents 10 milliseconds. So for about 10 milliseconds, I've got 0 volts. And then I jump to, this probably is about 2.5 milliseconds. And then it jumps down. And then, for a really short time, it jumps up and then down. 3 volts, no volts. 3 volts, no volts. And so it's hard to see. It's kind of scrunched up on this. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to see this pattern a little bit better. Okay, so now each of these boxes is 4 milliseconds. And so you can see that, these little increments of like a high voltage they're tiny. They're like maybe 1 millisecond in time, of like 1 millisecond on, off, 1 millisecond on, off, 1 millisecond on, off. And then here I've got longer periods of time they're on. So maybe this is about 2.5 milliseconds where it's on. So let's look at the pattern if I push a different button now. So this was 1, so let's try pressing 2. Okay, there's 2. Let's try pressing 3. Okay. So you can see when I press different buttons, I get different patterns here. And this is kind of like Morse code, but in infrared light. So I have these little almost like dots, right, where it's high voltage for a really brief amount of time, and then a dash where I've got a high voltage for a little bit longer amount of time. And when I look at it zoomed in, it looks like a lot of time, but this is actually a really short amount of time. I mean, like this is 1 millisecond that it's on. That's like 1/1000th of a second. So it's hard for our eye to detect this. And clearly we can't even see the infrared light on this thing, but a sensor can. So a sensor can look at this signal, this pattern of ons and offs, and know that it's associated with the button 1 or 2 or 3. So that is a little bit of how this remote control works in terms of sending a pattern of infrared light to the sensor.